Your e-mountain bike is full of a load of electrical components, that being the motor, the battery, the control unit, and of course your display. And all of that needs a lot of care. So today, I'll be showing you how to look after all the electrics on your e-bike. One of the most important parts of your e-mountain bike is going to be the charger itself. Now, if this breaks, you're not going to be able to charge up your e-bike and you won't be going anywhere. Now, a couple of things with these. Some e-bikes will have a magnetic Rosenberger connection. Now, these are really great, meaning that once your charger is lined up, it simply pulls itself via the magnet and puts your bike on charge. Now, one downside of these is, of course, with the head being magnetic, it will pick up any swarf or anything that's metal on your garage floor. So it might mean that your bike won't charge, or you could get a malfunction when you go to plug that charger into your bike. Now, a great little hack for those Rosenberger connections is to use an old school handlebar grip. Just lock the end off of it, and that creates a little plug you can actually just push over that connector to make sure it doesn't pick up any swarf or metal bits off your garage floor. So next time you plug it in, it's good to go. And lastly, with your chargers, just put them up nice and safe. We've heard loads of horror stories of people standing on them, cracking the ends off, or even a dog chewing it. So make sure it's put up safe and it's good to go next time you need it. All e-mountain bikes are going to have a charge port where you plug in your charger to charge up your battery. And a lot of these are also going to have a cover on them to stop dirt and moisture entering that charge port after you withdraw that charger. Now, it's vital every time that you stop charging your bike to click that cover back in place. It's going to stop all that dirt and moisture entering it. Otherwise, next time when you go to plug your charger in, you might find that that charger won't work because it's full of mud and water. These charge ports will vary from brand to brand, but just make sure that the cover is nice and clean, and also the port itself. And of course the charger, you don't want any dirt on that, because when you go plugging that in, you don't want any dirt to be getting into this because it will definitely cause you problems. So what exactly is a battery holder? Well, it's a device that holds the battery securely in your frame. Now, these will vary from brand to brand. For instance, the Specialized will just have a bolt that holds that battery in, whereas my Canyon actually has a mechanism at the front, which is a spring-loaded clip that holds that battery securely in the frame. Two different styles of holding that battery, and they do definitely require different amounts of care. And looking after the way that that battery is held into your frame is definitely vital. If you've got an old school key that locks your battery in place, you can just put some light oil onto the key, put it into the barrel, and that way it's going to keep it all lubed up and moving freely. If you've got a bolt that holds your battery into your bike, just whip it out, put some light oil or some grease on there. That way, when you come to remove it, it's going to come away nice and easy. If you've got a Shimano battery holder onto your bike, just putting some light oil onto that mechanism, again, is going to keep it moving nice and freely and keep that water at bay too. Just next time you come to remove that battery, it's going to become super easy to whip it out and get it on charge. And if you've got the older Shimano system with the external battery, you can actually adjust how tight that grip is on your battery. So just sliding the top clamp down just a few millimeters will ensure that battery is nice and snug. You're gonna get a nice connection and that battery won't rattle around. Just some little Allen keys at the top, slide it down, job done. The display unit on your e-mountain bike is a wealth of information on your handlebars, and there's a few different ways you can look after this one. First up is going to be the connections on the back of the head unit. If you've got a Shimano system, just make sure they're located nice and firmly into the back of the head unit and there's no damage on these wires. But when it comes to removing or replacing these wires, just make sure you use the dedicated Shimano tool that will help you remove and clip in these wires into your unit. If you go tugging on them, you can potentially rip the wires out of the head unit and they're going to be no good to anyone. Now, in terms of mounting the display on your handlebars, you want to check that it's not too loose and not too tight, because in the event of a crash, if you've got one of these bar mounted units, you want it to move rather than actually snap off your handlebars, because they can be very expensive to replace. And your mode controller, well, you just want that in a nice, easy to reach place. And don't forget, if you've got walk mode on your bike, you also want that walk button to be within easy reach when you're pushing your bike. There's no good having it underneath of your handlebars. You've got to reach around into an awkward position. Just get everything nice and dialed and within easy reach. On the rear wheel of your e-mountain bike, you can have a magnet of some sort fixed to it to determine how fast that rear wheel is spinning. Now, these magnets can be mounted to either the rear disc or even screw onto the spokes on some older models of bikes. Now these magnets need to be secure and they definitely need to be clean to pick up by that speed sensor. And also just make sure that they haven't fallen down the spokes if you've got those old school versions, or even facing the wrong way, and they can even fall off. So just make sure they're nice, clean and secure. Another thing you need to keep on top of is the speed sensor wire. Now this runs from the motor to that back wheel pickup. Now some of these can be mounted inside of your chainstay, or some can be externally mounted on the bottom or even on the inside of the chainstay. You need to keep on top of the condition of these just to make sure that they're not going to get picked up by that rear wheel or even get pinched in your suspension linkage. Sometimes you have little zip ties on there and these can break, and that can allow that wire to get snagged up by that rear wheel. So just inspect it to make sure everything is in tip-top condition and not going to get damaged. Connecting your motor, your battery, the head unit and your controls, and of course all the sensors on your bike will be a bunch of wires and leads. Now these need inspecting over time, because if there's any breakage or corrosion or damage to these, it could be the end of your ride. Whatever the lead, just check the condition of it, and you can protect the connections of it with some dielectric grease around them just to stop that water penetrating it. And of course water displacer is great. It's just going to give you a protective coating to help that moisture run away. And of course, if you've had your motor out for maybe some servicing or warranty work, just make sure when you come to replacing that motor, you're not snagging any of those leads or wires up. The battery itself on your e-bike doesn't need much care, as it's a sealed unit from the factory. Most you can do with this really is wipe it over with a damp cloth and inspect it and clean the connections that go into the terminals. Just make sure that they're not full of dirt and gunk. If there is any in there, you can use a water disperser spray. Just get in there lightly with a soft brush just to remove any of that. The worst enemy here is going to be rust. If you see any rust on your bike, you need to get some rust inhibitor on it with a soft brush. Again, just remove that before it builds up. The motor on your e-bike is a factory sealed unit and doesn't really require much maintenance from yourself. You can of course give it a helping hand by, if your motor has got those outer removable plastic covers, you can whip these off and clean all the gunk and the build-up of stuff that gets behind these. Also, just underneath the motor, you can have drain holes. Now this lets all that water drain away from the motor area. Now it's really vital that you keep these nice and clean and allow that water to flow out of your bike, because you can essentially drown it if you're riding in bad conditions or overzealous washing of your bike. And lastly, keeping on top of updates from your manufacturer is really vital on keeping your e-bike running sweet. Now, most of the big name manufacturers will have an app that will allow your smartphone to connect to your motor and the operating system on your bike, meaning that they can do this all over the air to keep your e-bike running sweet and possibly iron out any glitches that there might be in the software and the firmware that keeps your bike running. So there we have it, a load of ways on keeping on top of the electrics on your e-mountain bikes, and there's a lot of it on there that could possibly go wrong, so keeping on top of it is definitely vital. But let us know if we've missed anything out, or any ways that you guys look after your e-bikes and all those electrical components. Give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and make sure you subscribe to us here on EMBN, and we shall see you in the next one.